If you've ever stood in your kitchen holding like a tiny, mildly sweaty cube of cheddar cheese, you've probably felt a very specific kind of power.
Oh, absolutely, the cheese tax.
Right, the cheese tax. Your dog is just sitting there, eyes completely locked on your hand, motionless, and you think, I hold the ultimate currency here.
You feel like the center of their universe.
Exactly. I am the bringer of the cheese, therefore I am God. But we're doing a deep dive today into some wild new fMRI research highlighted in Dogazilla magazine. And this is a publication rigorously reviewed by veterinarians and certified trainers, so they know their stuff.
They really do. It's solid science.
Yeah. And the science is showing that your dog isn't actually staring at the cheese. I mean, they are, but they're staring at you. Our mission for this deep dive is to look at what is physically lighting up inside their brain. Because, as a lead researcher in this field, you're going to tell us how we fundamentally misunderstood canine motivation.
Yeah, we really have. We've spent decades, I mean literally decades, viewing our relationship with dogs through this highly transactional, almost behaviorist lens.
Like vending machines.
Yes, exactly like biological vending machines. Food goes in, obedience comes out. But effective neuroscience is finally giving us the tools to move beyond just, observing tail wags. We can actually look at the neurological root of their emotional experience.
And I really want to focus on how you researchers are getting that neurological data, because getting inside a dog's head without relying on guesswork, it requires some intense methodology.
It's definitely not easy.
No, I mean, the core of this Dogazilla magazine piece centers on that groundbreaking study from Emory University, where they used non-invasive fMRI, so functional magnetic resonance imaging, to physically scan the dog's brains in real time.
Right, the Gregory Berns study. It's iconic at this point.
But I have to push back on the logistics of this right away.
Yeah.
I've been in an fMRI machine.
They are not fun.
It's a terrifying, loud, incredibly confined tube. Humans barely tolerate it. So how do you scan a dog without just, measuring pure, unadulterated terror?
Well, that is the exact skepticism a lot of scientists had when this was first proposed.
I mean, doesn't the artificial environment completely skew the neurological data?
It would, yeah, if you just shoved them in there.
Yeah.
You absolutely cannot force a dog into an fMRI scanner and expect to get accurate baseline data.
Because they'd just be panicked.
Exactly. If their sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive, if they're stressed, their brain activity will purely reflect fear. The data would be totally useless for studying positive rewards.
So how did they do it?
So the researchers didn't just put dogs in a machine. They spent months, literally months, on gradual desensitization.
Wow. So they were training the dogs to view the MRI machine as a neutral space.
Neutral or even positive, yeah. They trained them to willingly walk up the steps and then rest their chin in this custom-fitted headrest.
Oh, that's adorable, but also sounds impossible.
Right. And they had to wear specialized ear protection to block out the industrial noise of the magnets. But the key thing is, the dogs could leave at any time. They were never restrained.
Wait, really? They just stayed in there by choice?
Completely by choice. And what is crucial to understand here is that this preparation phase actually proved a huge point before the study even officially began.
What do you mean?
It demonstrated how consistent human contact and patient training basically shape a dog's emotional regulation. The only reason these animals could adapt to such a bizarre environment was because of the profound trust they had with their human handlers.
Okay, that is fascinating. The trust actually overrode their instinct to flee the loud noise.
Exactly.
So that sets our baseline. The dogs are in the scanner, they are relaxed, and the researchers set up a comparative test.
Right, the real meat of the study.
Yeah, they present the dogs with food treats like small pieces of chicken or cheese, and then separately they present them with social praise.
No food at all for that part. Just their owners giving them enthusiastic verbal praise and physical petting.
Right. And if I'm looking at this from just a primal evolutionary standpoint, I just assume the cheese triggers a massive survival spike in the brain, while the praise is just a weak secondary response. Is that what the fMRI caught?
Well, that was the logical assumption under the old model.
Yeah.
But effective neuroscience proved the exact opposite.
Really?
Yeah. To understand why, we have to look at the specific region of the brain they were monitoring, which is the ventral caudate.
The ventral caudate.
Right. In mammals, humans included, the ventral caudate is basically an evolutionary ledger.
An evolutionary ledger. I like that.
Yeah, it calculates value, it keeps track of what guarantees survival and well-being, and it generates those neural signals for positive expectation. It's the reward center.
So the researchers are measuring the equity value the dog's brain assigns to the cheese versus the equity value it assigns to the praise.
Precisely. And the results challenge everything we thought we knew. For the majority of the dogs in the study, the ventral caudate showed equal or even greater activation when receiving social praise compared to the food treats.
Wait, greater activation for praise?
Yes, the neural reward signals generated by human voice and touch were incredibly potent.
Okay, I'm stuck on how a piece of chicken, which is literal calories required to sustain biological life, is beaten by a pat on the head.
It sounds counterintuitive, I know.
Yeah, evolutionarily, that doesn't seem to make sense. How does an animal wire its brain to prefer social cohesion over actual sustenance?
Well, we have to remember the evolutionary history of the dog. In a wild pack, being isolated means death.
Right, you can't survive alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Social cohesion is what guarantees access to food, shelter, and protection. Over thousands of years of domestication, dogs have adapted to view humans as their primary social structure.
So we are the pack.
We are the pack, and the brain doesn't strictly differentiate between the value of a friend and the value of food, because biologically, a trusted friend is the ultimate guarantor of food and safety.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, the ventral caudate lights up for praise, because social belonging equates to survival on the deepest level.
You know, if you've ever walked through your front door, empty-handed, after being gone all day, you kind of know this is true.
Oh, absolutely.
Your dog isn't looking for a hot dog. Their entire body is wagging just because you exist in their space again.
Exactly. And the fMRI data is essentially providing the hard scientific proof for that. It proves the social bond itself is the primary reward, not just a byproduct of us acting as a food dispenser.
So those excited vocalizations, the leaning against your legs.
Those are outward manifestations of an intense neurological reward pathway firing.
Yeah.
And it's triggered solely by your presence.
But let's look at the outliers for a second, because the Dogozilla article is very careful to note that this isn't a universal absolute for every single dog.
Oh, for sure. There's plenty of variance.
Yeah, because there is definitely someone listening right now looking at their beagle or golden retriever and thinking, my dog would absolutely sell me out to a stranger for a single French fry.
Oh, beagles. Absolutely. They will sell you out.
Right. And the study did note that some dogs preferred the treats. So why the discrepancy?
This brings us to the complexity of individual neurobiology. We just can't view dogs as a monolith. Just like humans, they have distinct personality profiles.
So genetics play a part.
Huge part. Breed traits, past training, and life experiences all heavily influence this. A working breed that's been selected for centuries to be highly food-motivated for complex retrieval tasks, well, they might naturally have a ventral caudate that assigns a higher baseline value to caloric rewards.
That makes sense. And the life experience factor must be massive too, especially when we start talking about rescue dogs or dogs with a history of neglect.
Oh, the contrast is starkest there. If a dog has a history of trauma, human interaction might not initially register in the brain as a source of comfort at all.
Right. It might be the opposite.
Exactly. For an abused dog, a human reaching out a hand might trigger the amygdala, the fear center, rather than the ventral caudate. And this is where we see a process of what we might call currency conversion.
Currency conversion, I love that phrasing, meaning you have to use one type of value to buy another.
Exactly that. For a rescue learning to trust again, food is the required foundational currency. It fulfills a primary survival need that doesn't demand any emotional vulnerability from the dog.
It's just a safe transaction.
Right. But by consistently providing food, you slowly build a bridge. You were literally rewiring their neurological expectation of what human contact means. Over time, that caloric reward buys the trust necessary to unlock the higher value currency of social connection.
That completely reframes the concept of rehabilitation. You aren't just feeding them, you are slowly transferring the value from the bowl to your hand and eventually to your voice.
Yes, beautifully said.
And speaking of your voice, the sources brought in some really crucial context from a 2016 behavioral study that differentiates between how we deliver that social reward.
Ah, yes, the petting versus praising study.
Right. It looked at the neurological distinction between physically petting a dog and just talking to them. Can you break that down?
Sure. So that 2016 study found that dogs overwhelmingly favored physical petting over verbal praise alone. When humans only used auditory praise, the positive behavioral responses were significantly lower.
But why is that? If they love us so much, shouldn't hearing good boy be enough to spike the ledger?
Well, it comes down to distinct neural pathways. Mammalian nervous systems have specific nerve fibers in the skin called C-tactile efferents.
C-tactile efferents, okay.
Right, and these fibers are evolved specifically to respond to slow, gentle stroking, When you pet a dog, you are physically stimulating these fibers, which triggers a massive release of oxytocin.
The love hormone.
Exactly. And it physically lowers their heart rate and cortisol levels.
Mm-hmm.
Auditory praise is processed differently. Tone of voice is definitely important, but it just doesn't provide the same immediate physical downregulation of the nervous system that touch does.
Okay, so the Emory fMRI study takes that behavioral observation and provides the neurological blueprint for it.
It shows that physical touch, combined with a reassuring tone, is what maximizes activation in the ventral caudate.
We are literally altering their neurochemistry through our fingertips. That is wild.
We really are. Though, I always like to maintain some scientific rigor here. The researchers themselves and the veterinarians analyzing the data do acknowledge the limitations of fMR studies on animals.
Right, I assume the sample size is pretty small.
Yes. Finding dogs willing to tolerate the noise and confinement limits your testing pool to highly adaptable, highly trainable animals right from the start.
Yeah, you're not putting a highly anxious chihuahua in there.
Definitely not. So drawing sweeping, universal conclusions from a limited number of brain scans requires some caution. But even with a small sample size, the data provides a statistically significant challenge to the assumption that food is the undisputed king.
And that forces us to basically reevaluate our daily interactions. So let's do exactly that. If my dog's brain actually prefers my affection compared to a piece of cheese, am I messing up their training by constantly relying on kibble?
Oh, no, you aren't messing them up at all by using food. But you might be missing an opportunity to build a much deeper bond.
Okay, so how do we take this complex, effective neuroscience out of the lab and apply it in our living rooms? What are the practical steps?
Well, the veterinary professionals cited in the source material suggest using these findings to deliberately integrate social rewards into your routine. Instead of viewing training as a transaction of sit, get a treat, view it as an opportunity for layered reinforcement.
Layering the rewards to engage multiple neural pathways at once.
Precisely. If you teach a new command using only food, the dog's focus remains entirely on the object in your hand. But if you pair a treat with enthusiastic verbal praise, and your pitch and cadence are really critical here, along with a physical touch they enjoy, you engage the ventral caudate through multiple avenues.
So you're shifting the ultimate value away from the food and onto the relationship itself.
Exactly. Over time, the social connection becomes the primary motivator.
It transforms the dynamic from like an employer paying an employee to teammates working together.
That's a great way to look at it.
The article also touched on how we view daily walks, which I thought was super interesting because I definitely tend to treat walks as a biological necessity, letting the dog out to burn off energy. But neurologically, it's a lot more than that, right?
Oh, absolutely. For a dog, a walk isn't just exercise. It is an immersive, cooperative social experience. It is a shared activity with their favorite person in a highly stimulating olfactory landscape.
Right, all the smells.
Yeah, the synchrony of moving together, the shared observation of the environment. These actions continuously engage the brain's reward pathways over a sustained period. It provides a level of emotional fulfillment that passively getting a treat on the couch just cannot match.
And speaking of olfactory landscapes, I found the third practical application from the source incredibly clever because it addresses dogs who suffer when we aren't around. It's about creating a passive social reward using scent.
Yes, the t-shirt trick.
Yes, leaving a worn t-shirt in their bed or crate. How does that tie into the neuroscience?
It is a direct application of understanding the ventral caudate. Dogs possess an olfactory system that is just magnitudes more powerful than ours. Because your dog's brain deeply associates your specific scent with the neurological rewards of your presence, the safety, the petting your scent alone becomes a trigger for comfort.
So you're basically leaving a physical piece of the ventral caudate activator in their resting space.
It acts as a biological proxy. For dogs with separation anxiety, smelling you heavily on a piece of clothing simulates the social reward. It helps downregulate their nervous system even when you are miles away.
That is such a simple adjustment, but it fundamentally relies on understanding that you are their source of safety, not just their chef.
Exactly.
So for the listener right now, how can they test this hypothesis with their own dog at home? The article mentions a simple step-by-step test.
Yes, and I highly encourage everyone to try this. You don't need an fMRI machine. Just run a basic behavioral observation in your living room.
Okay, what's step one?
Step 1. When things are calm, offer your dog a standard medium value treat. Observe their physical response. Look at the intensity of their focus, their posture, how fast the tail wags.
Got it. And then step two.
Later on, maybe a few hours later, initiate a highly enthusiastic petting session. Give them your full, undivided attention. Use a joyful, higher-pitched tone and physically engage with them. Really hit those C tactile affronts.
Right, the gentle stroking, and then we just compare the two reactions.
Exactly. Observe the difference in their body language. You might discover that while they appreciate the calories, your focused attention is actually the highest value currency they possess.
It requires a pretty profound shift in our perspective as pet owners. We have to stop defining our value by what we put in their bowls.
We really do. We need to start recognizing the immense neurological power of our presence, our voices, and our touch. We are the architects of their emotional well-being.
Well, to bring all of this together, the assumption that a dog's loyalty is bought exclusively with food is completely outdated. The brain scans prove that a dog is biologically wired to crave social connection.
Absolutely.
The warmth they show us isn't just a trick to get more cheese. It's a measurable neurological reality. The bond is real, and it literally lives in the ventral caudate.
And, if we look beyond the immediate scope of this research, there is a fascinating reciprocal implication here that I always like to leave people with.
Oh, I love a good provocative thought. Lay it on me.
Well, if effective neuroscience proves that our dogs' brains physically light up, that their cortisol drops and their joy centers fire simply from our affectionate words and touch, what do you think is happening to us?
Oh, wow. The mirror effect.
Exactly. We are mammals too. We share the same foundational neural architecture. How is the human brain physically rewiring, healing, and regulating its own stress pathways every single time we give that affection to them?
If their evolutionary ledger assigns massive value to the bond, ours almost certainly does too.
We are healing each other.
That is definitely something to sit with the next time you are standing in the kitchen holding that piece of cheese. You don't just hold the currency, you are the currency. And for your own neurological health, they are the currency for you too. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.